Okay. Well, I'm up there, so there must be AJ's on his vacation. It's Father's Day. And you know me, I like to pick things that most people don't want to talk about. So, we're going to Deuteronomy because, hey, it's rules. And when I think about dads, I think about rules. So I kind of put the correlation together a couple of years ago and thought, let's kind of stick with it. So if you found your place, open up your Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 11 through 20. And then once you've found your place, or if you're going to be following along on the screen, if you're able, please let us rise for the reading of Scripture. Hold on. For some odd reason, these have gotten very large all of a sudden. Interesting. Yeah. Let's see if I can make them smaller. Hold on. Nope, still not working. For some odd reason, we were having more technical difficulties. All right. You just got to listen to me. Verse 11. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and his rules and his statutes, which I command you today. Lest when you have eaten and are full and have built good houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks multiply, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, who led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground, where there was no water, who brought you water out of a flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna that your fathers did not know, that he might humble you and test you to do you good in the end. Beware, lest you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers as it is this day. And if you forget the Lord your God and go after other gods and serve them and worship them, I solemnly warn you today that you shall surely perish. Like the nations that the Lord makes to perish before you, so shall you perish, because you would not obey the voice of your Lord your God. Oh, that one didn't show up either. Okay. We're working really good. The Word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. My God. This thing was working just fine. Let's try it again. All right. Good Lord. Technology. I love it. I got here extra early and it worked just fine. So, went all the way through. So. All right. Okay. All right. Bear with me. Okay. Like I said, today's Father's Day, which means that guys like me get a little more good attention and a little more affection from our children and spouse. It also means you're stuck with me again for another Father's Day as AJ's off at his convention. And like I said, I like Deuteronomy, its rules, and when I think of my dad, I think of rules. And really about those rules was what happened if you didn't follow those rules. So, to me, it's very important. I still feel about it today. I walk into a room with the light on and nobody in there, and I'm like, are we made of money? I mean, it's not going to, I can remember that. Yes. So yes, I'm sure you all have as well. Deuteronomy is a Greek compound word which means second law. And if you don't know, Deuteronomy was Moses' final message. They had made it to the promised land, out of the wilderness, and he said, hey guys, everything I've taught you, remember it. And actually, that's the last I see of him. He goes off into the wilderness. But he was, wanting to make sure that the next generations knew the importance of all of those commandments, and that we have a choice every day, actually, about the thing, how we choose, and also, do we choose it on God's level or our level? Do we choose it as something we want or something God wants? Reminds me of a funny story I heard that there was a guy that was stranded on this little island for like 5 years, and finally one day, rescue ship, shows up, and as he's getting loaded into the rescue boat, one of the rescuers says, "I thought you were here all by yourself." And he says, "Well, I was." And he says, "Well, why is there 3 huts?" And he says, "Oh, yeah." He says, "The first one's my house. The second one, that's my church. And the third one was a church I used to go to, but I didn't like their message." Does that sound like people you know? Maybe yourself, even at a certain time, that, we got to get caught up in what we want. This rule, maybe it's outdated. They didn't have the internet back then. They obviously didn't know what we were talking about. So I think I'll do it my way. And I think that's really what this message here today is talking about, the difference between God's way and our way. And it doesn't matter who you are. We all fall prey to this. You guys know that myself and my family are really big fans of The Chosen. And if you take the time to look and watch some of those, they do a great job of showing that every one of those apostles were the same way. They watched these miracles happen. They knew who this person was, but then like the episode, who's going to get to sit at your right and left hand? And it automatically goes straight to that human perspective of what's in it for me. And that's really where I think Moses was coming at. When I thought about that little funny story, the first thing that I came to my mind of myself and something I can think about, when I was little, probably 9, 10 years old, it was a different time back then, especially right now, summer vacation. We didn't have things to do inside. It was expected of you to be outside. So we would go outside and find peer groups and play sports and go into woods and creeks, and we did all the stuff that young kids do. But I had an older brother, and he was 3 years older than me. Still got him, but he was responsible for me. Mom and Dad worked. So to me, I ended up those summers, spending it. I spent more time with them and his peer group than my own, because obviously he didn't want to be seen with 9-year-olds. He wanted to be seen with those, going into those teenage years. But it was tough. It was tough because whatever sport we would play, I'd get picked last. I would be the one that if one team lost that I was on, it was my fault because I was younger. And, me being, thinking to myself, I got to change this. I started lobbying, we need to change the rules. Hey, the shortest guy gets 5 strikes instead of 3. Or, but I was working at it because I wanted to be accepted into their group. They never backed down a bit. And what it made me do was get better. It made me spend time practicing those sports until the point in time where I realized I wasn't being picked last. I did enjoy the sport longer, but I took myself out of it, in that example, and said, let's honor the way it's actually supposed to be done. So, no excuses, just, get better. And I look at that today with us and say, there's times that we wrestle with, what God is saying and what it is we want to do. And I just hear that voice of God saying, get better, work harder. There's a message for you, but you've got to do the work. It's not going to come to you easy. So today I think, you're going to hear a little bit kind of the same message over and over again? I did. Now again, technology, so hold on. I was struggling with the thing at midnight last night. So, being Father's Day, I thought of a famous father that I thought we could probably, and I'm sure everybody's going to know who this is if I bring it up. Hey! We know this guy. Hey, it works! The father of our country, George Washington. I putting this together as Father's Day, I thought, everybody knows George. Everybody knows who George Washington is. If you've been to school, probably starting first grade, you know who George Washington is. What I didn't know was more of his, religious aspects of President General Washington. He was part of that Church of England early in his life, and then as he came over here, I think there were two different churches that he when he was home at Mount Vernon that he attended. One was a Baptist church, was about 7 miles away, and I'm trying to remember the other. But from a standpoint, I think about that in their perspective. 7 miles for them was not easy. Yeah, not easy. But anyway, also I didn't know that, and maybe you guys did, that like during the French and Indian War, because the being on the side of the British that he was during that conflict, that the British didn't provide chaplains. So he would step in. And that was one of the things that he made sure of when we finally started that point of the Revolutionary War, that he wanted to make sure there were enough chaplains for his soldiers. And I did. That kind of hit me. I was like, wow. And there are multiple examples of him stepping in as chaplain from that perspective while he was still, leading troops or, whatever that may be. Another thing, there was I wanted to try to get a little bit of a local flavor of the Native Americans, since that's, where we come from. This is Old Town. That's the reason why the Native Americans are the ones that named it. But they feared him. And they feared him because of a certain battle that I guess word spread during that French and Indian War. Now, I'm probably going to really axe this up, but it's the Monongahela battle that he was point blank. They got ambushed, and he actually went out into an opening and was trying to lead his troops, and one of the Indian warriors came up 10 feet, rifle shot, didn't move. He finds out later after the battle, he has 4 musket holes in his jacket, but none of them hit him. They saw this and just said, this guy must be some sort of god, because they saw it. They realized that he should be dead. The other part about that was odd was that every single officer on a horse died in that battle, except George Washington. He had 2 horses shot out from underneath him during that battle, but he still lived. So the reason I bring that up is not a history lesson, but more about George Washington believed in providence. He believed in the fact that there was a reason that the Creator was doing what he did, and from his viewpoint, it was, I need to be able to be dutiful to that Creator. I need to be able to honor that Creator. And so that purpose led right into the Revolutionary War. You had that, the Indians feared him. We declare independence, which I think in 2 weeks we're going to celebrate 248 years, that birthday. Then the first person, they didn't even have to think. First person, who's going to lead the revolution? George Washington. I mean, everybody knew it. So that providence that he even had back then was working its way forward. But I read a couple of, I researched this, and a couple of things that he mentioned of where he thought providence really made a point in the revolution was early on. Being late August, I think maybe, trying to evacuate out of Long Island because the British had landed and they were coming. And they didn't have enough boats He had 8,000 men on the side that the British were coming, and he was trying to get them across the East River. And he says, this doesn't look good. We're going to get annihilated. And about that time, the fog came in. The fog came in just long enough for those guys to get across. Now again, you may think about that guy, he didn't have that app on the phone. If he'd had the app on the phone, he wouldn't know. But no, he thought the reason of why that happened. And then further on in that year, Christmas, he's down to 3,000 troops. He's pretty much trying to figure out, we got no food left, we got no ammo left. Do we just pack it in? But what's he do? You all remember. Crosses the Delaware, goes into Trenton, and not only does he get that victory that they needed, but he got supplies. He got food to get him through until, again, he's the one who brought this up and just said, there's more to this than just me. This isn't about what I can do. I've got help, so to speak. So, and I'm pretty sure, there was after the war was over, there was actually a document of what he said. He was writing a letter to Samuel Langdon. He says, the man must be bad indeed, who can look upon the events of the American Revolution without feeling the warmest gratitude toward the great author of the universe, whose driving interposition was frequently manifested in our behalf. He knew it. He knew there was a reason we were supposed to do this. And he took that further into his presidency of saying, this was the expansion of the promised land. God's doing this for our reason. We got to keep going. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So I wanted to do on Father's Day and with the 4th of July coming up, I hope that it kind of made, go back and look. I was really surprised. Either my history books back then just weren't as detailed, but yeah, we owe a lot to the President and General George Washington. So anyway, let's go back to, let's see. Well, of course, they're still doing something. Okay, so let's get started with verse 1. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and rules and statutes which I command to you today. Moses uses the word shamar, which means to keep watch or be attentive to. Be attentive to not forgetting Jehovah and the commandments that he has. Keep those commandments. I do believe we have, yes, if you go a little further, of course. King Solomon, he wrote in Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Solomon was actually giving this to his son, some fatherly advice, which again I thought felt relevant today. Trust God. It's our nature to trust somebody, and that may be a person, that may be, he was saying, trust Jehovah, trust the God of the covenant. So that is where I took from that slide. Verse 12. Blessed when you have eaten and are full and have built good houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks multiply and your silver and gold is multiplied, all that you have is multiplied. All right, Moses is saying it. You guys came out of the wilderness. We came out of slavery. We came out of Egypt. You're now going to get your chance. You're actually going to get, that chance to actually do it just more than the bare minimum. We're not just going to have, enough to get by. So when you go that way, remember who to give thanks to. Remember who to give thanks to for why you're able to have abundance. I thought about this, and I'm sure a lot of you have, you remember, especially the one I can remember the best would be your young parents. You have a little one. You're probably not, you're still new to the workforce, so you're probably not making that great of money, and you try to figure out, you know how every way to stretch a dollar, you know every coupon there is, and then you look back on it in 20 years and go, how did we do it? How did I raise a child or 2 children or 3 children on this little bit of money I had? I mean, that's God. That's God doing that for you. So I really think you have to keep that in perspective and understand that definitely to be thankful for God and what He can provide. So, all right, we'll keep moving. Verses 14 through 16. Then your heart be lifted up and you forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and led you through the great wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground, where there's no water, who brought you water out of a flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna that your fathers did not know, that He might humble you and test you to do good in the end. I mean, again, we talked about this. This is just that recap of what they've been through. Don't forget about that. But, I mean, you think about it. The flinty rock, the manna, I mean, they had lost hope. They had all kinds of different idols they were worshiping, other gods, because they thought, we're out. We don't have any money. We don't have any food. We don't have any water. We're going to die. The other part about that I can caught me is interesting is, and if you've I think AJ may have done a sermon on, or brought this up in one of the sermons, the bronze snake. That's what they did, to heal them from the snake bites. Is the exact symbol of the American medical. Is that exact same? I find that just very interesting. Out of all these years, that's still the symbol, and it is having that faith. Now, again, we don't have the bronze snake anymore, but do we have that faith in our medical community, in our doctor, in our nurses? I think it's still saying that same thing. There's a lot that can be said for faith. Okay, so keep going. I have, let's see, verse 17 and 18. Beware, lest you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. You shall remember the God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, that He may confirm His covenant that He swore to your fathers, as it is this day. I think the phrase that comes to mind here is the pride comes before the fall. At that point in time that we believe that we don't need God, I'm the reason I got all this stuff. I'm the reason. I think that's the step where the fall is going to start. This thought, the thing that kind of come to mind with me on this was Matthew 4, and I may have that one. And the devil took him to a very high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away with me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve Him only. Again, I love this part, just the fact that it's a total mirrorization of the devil's temptation and what the Israelites went through in the wilderness. Turn these stones to bread after you fasted. And then, hey, show them how important you are. We'll throw you down and you won't even bruise your foot. And then the last one is, I'm going to give you all the power in the world. Everybody knows who you are. And we follow that. That same thing, as you start to believe it is you and you're the reason why you are having fortunate things happening to you, why you're in God's graces, good graces, then that's what's going to happen. It's going to follow. I can go ahead and predict that. I'm no Nostradamus, but I can predict what will happen. Let's see. Let's finish up now. I know you guys are probably getting tired of hearing me. So, verse 19. And if you forget the Lord your God and go after other gods and serve them and worship them, I solemnly warn you today that you shall surely perish. Like the nations that the Lord makes to perish before you, so shall you perish, because you will not obey the voice of the Lord your God. Whew! I don't think it can get any more plain than that. And I think that the fact being, again, we can go back to the father of our country. I mean, I looked up, as I just wanted to know, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on what type of person you are, you can go just about anywhere in the state of Ohio, just about anywhere, and place a bet on something. I asked, what were the odds makers put the Revolutionary War, the American independence? What would they have the odds at in 1776? In July 1, 1776, 100 to 1 odds. That this group of farmers, tradesmen, for the most part, and a few of the old British regular military that have joined, outnumbered, outskilled, going up against the best and most feared army in the world. I mean, they could just conquer anything you want. So when you sit there and think about Providence that Washington talked about, he knew it. He knew they had no business going toe-to-toe with these guys. It would be like the Buckeyes going against the Bobcats. I hate to say it. It's just everybody knows who's going to win that game when they see it on the schedule. I mean, and that's the same way this was. The only question is how bad. It's what it is. But that Providence, and I believe that from that point, through the Revolutionary War, then we had, we had westward the Spanish-American War, and then the Civil War. We kind of kept that mindset to be thankful that we were doing God's work. But unfortunately, I just believe, probably in my lifetime, something changed. I was curious, and I looked back of blue laws. When did blue laws? When did we stop, shutting everything down on Sunday? And at least in Ohio, it was 1973. Because we thought that themselves mainly, business drives politics. I hate to say it, folks. I mean, I work in it every day, and it's just what it is. Money talks a lot, and that was what probably more than likely caused that. But it also got me thinking, where blue laws begin? Does anyone have a clue where blue laws started? Hey, I found out. Blue laws started, and this is funny, they've got the actual date. March 7th, 321. Emperor Constantine enacted it first in Rome with the mindset that God rested on the seventh day, so shall we. And that thing carried from 321 all the way through the Middle Ages, all the way over to the New World, and all the way to 1973. I just thought that's amazing. But again, it makes you kind of think. Are we on the right path? Are we doing the right thing? I don't know. I think we've been playing a dangerous game, patting ourselves on the back of how advanced and intelligent we are, and that we don't need God. We've got the internet. We've got smartphones. I mean, we've got Google. I mean, why do we need God? I think that's the biggest question. And when you look at God, why do we need God? Why do we need fathers? Because they're one and the same. God is our father, but you also need that father of the household. You also need that grandfather that's given that sage wisdom advice. They've been there. They've struggled. And they don't want you to do it. But that doesn't mean you don't go through the same steps they go through. So now I fear for our young people. I do. I worry because I do believe something's missing. Last year, I forgot. I want to give you a little update. You'll like this, Monk. Hey, remember I talked about these ladies last year? Now I said, eyes up. Oklahoma softball team. All right, Mom, what do we know?
4 in a row.
4 national championships in a row. These girls that have done this, in that 4 years, 235 wins, 15 losses, 131 wins by mercy rule. And they have not been shut out at all in that time frame. That's impressive. So, I think these ladies know what it is. I do. It's what matters most, and that's Christ. Those providence we're talking about, it'll follow, but God's got to be first. There's just no way around it. Okay, so let's finish up here with Matthew 7 and 21 and 24. Let's see if I can find it on here. Of course, they're still big. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like the wise man who built his house on the rock. You know, there's a lot of people that like just the kind, nice Jesus. You know, don't tell me to do anything. Just, you know, let me be nice when I'm out. That's not what he's saying here. I mean, like I talked about last Father's Day, love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with everything that you have. That's rule number 1. Second rule, love your neighbor just like that. So that's what he's saying here. That's the foundation. If you can't get that, all this nice stuff really doesn't matter. And also, not as much a father. I didn't bring a picture of him, but when I was researching this, Abraham Lincoln was asked during the Civil War. I think it was right about the time of the proclamation of the freeing the slaves. He was asked which side was God on in this conflict. And his answer was beautiful. He said, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side. For God's side is always right. So folks, I do really feel like we're getting to that 11th hour. It's getting close at hand. Time's running out. We're running out of ways that we can steer this boat in a different direction. And it starts with getting to those folks, those younger folks, and realizing you do have experience, you do have wisdom, you do have providence of why you're here where it is. Let them go, let them understand it. Let them understand that there's only one way to get it. You got to come to the house of the Father. You've got to listen to His Word, and providence will follow. So today, thank your dad or grandfather, and wish them a happy Father's Day. And if unfortunately you don't have a dad or father, think to yourself, what would he say about this current world we live in? Would he be happy with it? Take that as your mission going forward. Give Dad a little extra nod as you look up and say, all right, Dad, I'll tell him. All right. So, amen. Okay. So I think we are to... Oh, of course, now that one comes up front. Oops. Ooh. Get out of here. Closing hymn 710, Faith of Our Fathers.